1 second. He's gonna be here soon.
Awesome.
There you go.
What's going on, bro?
Hello.
What's up, man? Hey guys, how you doing?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. It's good to finally meet you guys.
Same, bro.
Alex,
Same.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking your time and being on our podcast.
Oh man, it's all good. I mean, I love this stuff, and it just, just to get the message out there and to cross-pollinate audiences, man, and to create some awesome content. I mean, I appreciate you guys taking time. Yeah.
Man, come on now, bro. As soon as
Of course.
yeah, no, we try to stay consistent on this too, so that way, and obviously we want to have people like you on, so that way our audience can learn, especially me too. I need to learn too, bro. So I'm kind of cheating, I kind of doing this a little selfishly for me, but.
and look, man, I mean, like that's one of the things, like. I love having these conversations because then it's like a lot of information that you and I can kind of absorb as well. I mean, there'll probably be things in the discussion that you might bring up that I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to go away and learn that,
For sure.
Yeah.
Turn off my ringer. All right, cool.
Yep.
Cool, bro. All right, well, let's get this thing started. Let me
You're going
just
to
turn off this
introduce
one.
us, right?
So how do I say your name the right way?
So it's Fraser, like razor, but with an F.
Okay, I thought that's how it was. I just didn't want to mess it up. So
Yeah, dude.
And then Bailey is your last name.
Most people don't even ask, so I just kind of roll with Fraser.
Okay, so Fraser Bailey, right?
Fraser Bailey.
Fraser
Fraser.
Bailey.
Yeah.
Fraser.
That's it.
Fraser.
That's a great
Bailey.
way to explain it.
Yeah. All right, cool. I just want to make sure. All right, cool. So let's get going. So here we are.
Recording?
Yeah. Moy, it's recording, right?
Moy.
We're recording. So, all right. So, welcome to the 727 podcast. I'm Alex Corona.
And I'm Jamie Burks.
And today I'm very excited to bring to you one of my friends, Fraser Bailey. And we're going to talk a lot about how this man is a superhuman. And hopefully we can get a little bit of help on how we can be superhuman.
Guys, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm excited to have the discussion and just open up the whole conversation about health relating to business, entrepreneurship, parenthood. I mean, it all intertwines. You can't have one without the other, right?
Absolutely.
Before we get started, I need to know, where's your accent from?
So I'm from New Zealand originally. So I'm from New Zealand, been in the US for almost 12 years. I actually got my US citizenship last year.
Congratulations, bro. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. So and we were down in Louisiana for 10 years where my wife's from originally, but we're now up in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. So I mean, this area, man, whether you're a beach person or a mountain person, the Smoky Mountains is beautiful,
Really cool. We were just there about a month ago, so yeah, we thought it'd be a little bit more smoky, but it was cool.
Yeah,
We were happy. We were happy there.
So I have a good friend of mine that he's from New Zealand as well, and he would tell me, he's like, call me Kiwi, and I'm like, okay, Kiwi, and I just thought that was like his name, or something that like his something, an inside story about it. But one day he's like, no, that's what they call everybody from New Zealand. I'm like, oh shit, my bad. I didn't know.
Yeah, dude, that's like the sort of local native mascot, and it's like people ask me sometimes, it's like, is that derogatory? Like, can I call you that? I'm like, you can. It's like a nice thing to call a New Zealander. So
I never heard that before, so that was the first time I heard it. I was like, okay, Kiwi.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I love that.
One day I'm gonna go there though. So I heard it's really cool. My brother's been out there. He's been to Australia and New Zealand, and he tells me, he's like, Alex, he's been all over the world, and that's his favorite place. So
yeah, it is beautiful, man. It really is, guys.
So what made you come to the States?
So my wife, actually. It's funny because before the days of online dating being normal, we connected through Facebook because we're both in the health space, so we're both sort of doing health related stuff. And she was running a gym. She had her own personal training studio. Me being in the nutrition space, we were in sort of the same health masterminds.
Okay.
And it's funny because we just kind of clicked, and we built this friendship online. And then at a certain point, I just thought to myself, if I don't come over here and just meet her and see what could be, it's going to be one of those cliche stories of I'll look back when I'm 80 years old and always wonder what if. Always wonder, what if I just took that risk? What if I just took that leap? And instead, I let like my fear stop me, right? And so came over here on a temporary visa, got married, adjusted the visa status, went through the whole legal process, which was like I mean, they pretty much give you everything short of like a colonoscopy. So it's like, the full
They want to
full
make
thing.
sure.
Yeah.
The full thing. But then, and now, man, like 12 years on, we have a 5-year-old daughter. The rest is
Congrats.
history. And so, like, I came over here for that reason. And that's one of the things that I tell people, guys, is like, when I did that, that really opened my eyes to that notion that if if I didn't take that leap, like how different would my life be? And so I think about that now when I'm making like business decisions. Like when I'm thinking about a business play or something that I want to do that's outside my comfort zone, I always think about that instance. And it kind of helps me like get through my own barriers,
Right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you guys, I guarantee because you probably had to do things in your own business that were like a leap of faith. And you're like, we don't know if this is going to work, but we back ourselves and we'll figure it out as we go.
Right.
Just like you mentioned, one of my damn near only fears is regret. And I would rather fail terribly, or at least I know I tried. So
100%.
and I'll never lose because I won't quit. So it's okay.
Yep. Yep. And the thing that I think about is even if things don't turn out the way you wanted, you learn. So I tell people even when it comes to health related stuff, they say, oh, will this work? Will this not work? And I'm like, just think of it as lessons. You can try a lot of things. Some things will work great. Other things that don't work, it's just information, feedback on like what you need to change. So as long as you have the right mindset, you're not failing. So yeah.
That's a great way to look at it.
Definitely.
And what an amazing story. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that Jamie mentioned story, like what is your story, bro? How did you get superhuman? My goodness.
Yeah. So
Like
it
as wide as
is
both of us put
interesting.
together.
I know, I'm like, no muscles here.
So it is interesting in the sense that I came from a completely different space altogether. So before I went back and studied nutrition and human structure and function, which is kind of like physiology, I was a butcher. So I was a butcher working in these like meat slaughterhouse type setups and stuff. And I left school young. My whole story is like complete other end of the spectrum. So I was diagnosed with bipolar depression, severe social anxiety, ADHD when I was 12 years old. Me being 40 this year, back then those types of diagnoses weren't common. You didn't have a lot of people getting diagnosed with ADHD when I was 12, especially things like bipolar depression and stuff like that. It's way more common now. We can obviously dive into all the mechanics around that, but so I was diagnosed with all these things, and I had a ton of mental issues. I struggled at school. I was the kid that was getting C's and D's for achievement, but I was getting B's and A's for effort. So I felt even more stupid because here I am like trying, but my results were terrible. And I thought to myself, man, maybe I'm just not cut out for this like academia type stuff. Maybe it's better if I just go and get a blue collar job, basically. And so my whole thing was, what's the path of least resistance? That's kind of how I was thinking at the time. And I happened to be working in a butchery part-time after school, like cleaning up. And that was the path of least resistance. It's not like I sort of thought to myself, what do I want to be? And it just kind of like, I got this passion for butchery. It happened as like the easiest route. And so I left school at 15 years old and I went and did that. And I tell you guys, that just was like adding rocket fuel on the mental health stuff. Because usually what you'll find in a lot of industries like that, blue collar industries, is that it tends to be almost like a wolf pack dynamic where you have an alpha male or a couple of alpha males and you have like a whole wolf pack. And if you're not part of that wolf pack, you're sort of ousted, and there's a whole energetic social dynamic with that. And most of the guys in that environment had a ton of addiction issues and mental health issues. So when you start combining alcohol and drug use on top of being in an environment like that, on top of having those types of underlying pathologies, you just asking for trouble. And so I went down completely the wrong hole. I was a lot of the people that I associated with back then have either now been in prison for decades, or some of them aren't even alive at this point. So it's like really, I'm talking like way other end of the spectrum. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I just remember one morning I woke up and I would cry every time I had to go to work. Like my alarm would go off in the morning, I would cry just because, when you're in a place where you hate what you do so much, you honestly just feel like there's nothing that fills you up. And I remember thinking, if I don't quit this job now, I don't even think I'm going to be alive in a year from now. And so I have to just get out. And so by the age of about 19 or 20, I'd gone through multiple years of just grinding through, struggling, suffering, literally living like in poverty. I mean, scrounging for coins to go get cans of beans. I would spend all my money on alcohol and cigarettes. I mean, it was really bad, guys. And that's when I started seeing a psychotherapist. And one of the things that he suggested to me was, he's like, why don't you try working out? And at the time, YouTube wasn't really mainstream yet. And so it wasn't like you could just learn all these things online. We didn't have mastermind groups like you and I are in. There definitely wasn't any of that. And so if you didn't have like a physical book or know someone that had the result that you want, it's going to be very hard to like get that help. And so I didn't know that working out was good for like your brain chemistry. I didn't know working out had all these other benefits. I just thought it was something bodybuilders did. And like at the time, I was like, I don't really care about that stuff. I mean, like whatever. But he said to me, he's like, why don't you try it? And so I thought to myself, well, there's been a lot of other things that he's been right about. Like he knows me at this point. So I thought, I'm just going to try and see. And I tell you guys, it really started to change my life, because for the first time, I could see how me putting in like effort in this area gave me some obvious visual ROI. So it wasn't like, okay, I hope this is working. I wonder if this is working. I could see it. And it was, especially coming from a place where you've had crippling anxiety to the point where you get panic attacks in public and stuff. When you can control one thing like your body, it gives you this sense of calm. Like at least I have control of something. And that's kind of planted that seed. Like, it's like once you find something that you're fascinated with, it's almost like you don't need anyone else to push you. You just have that curiosity to just roll with it. And that's when I went back to study nutrition and fitness and human structure and function. And even then, get this, even with everything that I've been through, I only just passed at the time. It was like I just scraped through. And I think part of it was I still had some of the old habits. I didn't really understand nutrition that well. I was still kind of drinking. I'd made a lot of progress and I had some okay physical results, but I still wasn't really dialed in. And then fast forward all that, I get that. I start doing nutritional programming for people in gyms. And that's when I met my wife, Lauren, in some of these online groups, because I started to try and learn about like, how could I get better at coaching, right? And so obviously this was a very, very early stages of online groups and masterminds, very early stages. And that's obviously where the seed kind of got planted. And long story short, I come over here and I just kind of get more and more obsessed with the health stuff. I feel like a lot of people who are diagnosed with ADHD, I actually feel like it's a superpower almost. It's like it's a weapon when you know how to channel it. My wife will tell you that, like, I have almost a photographic like memory. So I can hear something on a podcast and I can retain it. Well, I don't read books, but I'll listen to a whole podcast and I can retain all the useful pieces of information, assimilate it, learn it, apply it, and then teach it. And so she's like, I don't know how you do that. You just kind of just take on all this this information, and how do you retain so much? I don't know if it's just part of the way I'm wired. And now to the point where by pushing and really working at refining that craft to the point where the results are, for me, were obvious, and then I started to get other people really pronounce results. That's what opened the door to work with, former Navy SEALs, former Army Rangers, Green Beret. Like I've done stuff with all the special operators around, SWAT, police, all the way to high-level attorneys, real estate agents, business owners, CEOs, to like musician Chris Daughtry, who was one of the first American Idol guys. Like I work with him very closely. I'm literally prepping him for a muscle and fitness spread for Friday. So it's gone from like scrounging for money to get cans of beans, working in a butchery, to the point now where I've just had the blessing of being able to work with some really high level people. And we use a lot of advanced concepts now. So, I mean, I use a lot of blood work related stuff. So for, if I have someone coming in at this point, they might get a full blood panel run, food sensitivity testing, hair mineral testing done. And then I kind of reverse engineer all the little details in a way that's simple. So they can take all that confusing data in a very, very simple process and be able to apply it for themselves in a situation where they might be a busy parent, entrepreneur, traveling a lot, doing a lot of lectures, speaking events, whatever, and are able to make it all work. And for me at this point, guys, it's not really, people will see me on social media and they might see my physique. It's not really, and you probably know this to be true, I'm sure yourself, it's not really about the physical component anymore. It's definitely about the way I feel. So I know as a husband and a father, if I don't look after myself, my fuel tank is going to be low. And when I'm in that place, I'm irritable. I'm not going to be energetic for my daughter and play with her. I'm not going to be, happy and engaged with my wife. And then obviously, if those things are not good, those foundational things like the connection like between you guys, between me and my wife, then everything is off. The connection with your students, with your clients, with your people, it's all off. And that then affects like your business. And so my whole thing is like, how do you elevate yourself going from that 1.0 to that 2.0 version of yourself? And how do you be like a walking billboard for your values? You guys are very sort of athletic and vibrant looking. That's what stood out to me about you guys in the first place. And I tell other business people that in many ways you are a walking billboard for your brand. And obviously, the clothes or the vehicle or the house, that's important. Like that package is important, but like your vitality and your energy. And if you don't have that and you don't look healthy, subconsciously there's gonna be a disconnect. And so my whole thing now, guys, is like, how do you create that best version of yourself? And I say that because, I was on medications for 12 years. And now I've been off them for 12 years. So I was on all those things for all those psych meds, for all that stuff. And now I've been off all of it. And I've had to learn all these things myself, apply them to myself to finally get to this point. So long story short, that's kind of the journey thus far.
It's amazing, bro.
Yeah.
Been through a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
And you've definitely learned a lot because I've been working out ever since my son was born. My second son was born. It's been about maybe 7 years, and I just, I can see I'm, doing a little something. I was eating pretty good for a while, and now, I'm just up and down, and it's been, it's been a mess. And I've tried, trainers, I've tried health and wellness coaches. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm 1,000% committed like I should be. And I see some of the stuff that you eat, and I'm just like, how do I get my hands on something?
It looks really good.
Thank you. And one of the things that I tell people, and I think one of the things, kudos to you first for trying a range of things. I tell people it's kind of like, it's like anything. Like you've got to try different options and experiment with different people. And I also tell people very often they have this all or nothing mentality, which kind of serves them in some ways. That all or nothing mentality, like you play big, like you go all in, you want to hit home runs. And then sometimes when it comes to the health stuff, it's those base hits, those repetitive base hits that don't look as sexy, that are not as glorious, but they compound. And I tell people, I think that a lot of people when they're trying to change their diet and work on their health, they think about all the things that they need to remove. Oh, that's bad, this is bad, that's bad, and they just pull everything out. And you think about it from that perspective of you're creating all these big voids, these big gaps, and then you're like, well, what do I put in this spot? If you don't intentionally put something in that spot, that old habit just comes back in at some point. And so what I tell people is rather than trying to abstain, say for instance, if you had a sweet tooth and you're like, I've got to just not have sugar, I'm done. Yeah, like Alex is like, right, no more sugar for Alex for the rest of the year. And I mean, you might be all like pumped up and motivated, but at a certain point, that's just not practical. Your brain on a day you've just had an exhausting day, a deal's fallen through, you're just tired, you're like, whatever. And you just want to like let loose. And what I tell people is find what I call like bridging tools and healthy upgrades for maybe some of those older foods. And so there's a lot of healthier baking mixes now. There's a brand that I use based out of Australia called Macro Mike, for example. They have these higher protein, healthy baking mixes like triple chocolate brownie mixes, donut mixes, salted caramel cookie mixes. And I'll use those for my daughter even, because I don't want her eating Oreos and all those things. So we'll get the healthier baking mixes for her. I'll do that stuff in some capacity a little bit every day. And it's low in allergens, it's got a really clean nutrient profile. And so I'm eating this thing that is sweet. It's fulfilling that need. I'm not fighting myself anymore with the diet, and I get the result. And so I tell people part of it is just like when you have other options, you can kind of maneuver that and find these bridging tools. And again, that's been like my journey, because I was the guy who would try and stop, and I would sort of do this binge purge thing. A lot of fitness people typically do that, where it's like they restrict, and then they just kind of relapse, restrict, relapse. And I thought to myself, that has just not worked. And I find for a lot of my students, that typically doesn't work. And so finding bridging tools, healthier upgrades, man, it's a game changer,
That's cool, yeah. And that's stuff I didn't know. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I also tell people, like find your journey is a spectrum, guys. So rather than thinking that, okay, I'm going to do 75 hard and I'm going to be like 100% all in and I'm not going to deviate at all, I would say if that works for you, do it. But if you've done it before and you've just gone back, and you've done it before and you've gone back, what I would say is find that middle ground where maybe you keep things locked in, and then we program in a free meal that you guys can have as like a date night once or twice a week, where you can go out, you can have that meal you enjoy, you can connect, and you can have that dietary break, and then you're back to the focus. And I say, like, when you schedule that in, and it's like you're doing it on a day you work out, for example, and then ideally if you're training the next day, you can actually get really good results. And so I try to tell people that, because I want people to realize that you don't have to be a sort of a psycho, basically, to be able to get good results. Yes, it's important to have routines and have these structures and systems. I mean, part of what you guys talk about is how do you compress down time and get more stuff done? How do you become more efficient with everything you're doing? And so that's always been a big focus for me, because dealing with guys like Chris Daughtry, the musician, I mean, his iCalendar is just stacked. And so he's got so much stuff, and he's also a husband, he's also a father, he's got 3 young kids. One of them has some learning challenges, so it makes things even more complicated. And he still has to get in shape for his music videos and his album promotion stuff and all these things. And so we use a lot of these concepts on guys like him who are traveling, going on tour, at home sometimes, and then on the road, on tour buses. If someone like that can make these processes work, guys, like anyone can, once you have the right tools,
That was actually my question for someone who wants to, because fitness and health is, I think, just a common struggle with the world, and I think the number one question people think, I don't have time, and how do I get started? Like, what do I do first? And I love the fact that you said instead of eliminate, substitute, and then also you don't have to schedule a 2-hour workout every single day of the week for it to be effective. You can do small things consistently. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, I tell people, I call them low-hanging fruit principles, where there's this Pareto law of 80-20. So 80% of your results will come from 20% of your action, and I've seen that play out in my own life. And I tell people, if I was going to give someone like an 80-20 principle of what are the main things, if you're starting or you're wanting to try and get to that next level, but you're not really sure, like, where should you be focusing? I would say, if you weight train 3 to 5 times a week for 20 to 45 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week, if you get your step count up to say like at least 10,000, I'm going to give you a hack in a second that can really help with fat loss. So my step count's up around 20,000, and down in my other office, I have a standing desk with a treadmill, and so it's like a little walking pad. And when I'm at my computer, I'll just be plodding along methodically, and I'll clock up about 20,000 steps in a day. And I've had our students do nothing else but add that in, and people lose so much body fat. It's crazy. People don't realize how much your step count can massively improve not just your fat loss but your energy levels. And so very often what I tell people is if you're getting that mid-afternoon crash, a walking pad, some type of setup with a standing desk and a treadmill where you're just plodding along, that can not only get you through those energy dips when you'd normally be wanting to like grab something to eat, it helps with digestion and it helps with fat loss. So I tell people, like, get your step count up. And a lot of the guys and gals that I work with are busy entrepreneurs like you guys. So it's like, well, they're like, well, Fraser, I get it, but how am I meant to take like an hour walk each day? And that's not going to happen. And I'm like, that's an example of what I just talked about, where you're stacking habits on top of each other. The habit stacking principle, where sometimes I'll throw my weighted vest on. I did a live stream in one of my coaching groups the other day. I had my weighted vest on, I was walking, and I did the live stream all at once because I wanted to check off all the boxes, man. And so it was like an hour live stream. Just got a bunch of like fat burning stuff done, and I did a value adding live stream. So I would say that's the next component. And then a couple of the other ones are like, if you get your blood work run, that can open so many doors for people. I don't think they understand how useful it can be. So what I tell people is if you go and get a fully comprehensive blood panel done with thyroid, sex hormones, everything, it can really show you areas that are not right, and that can be really affecting your mood, your energy, your vitality in general. And if you know which areas aren't quite right, you can troubleshoot those things and see massive improvements. I mean, a classic example is vitamin D. So a lot of people will have a low vitamin D status. That usually affects their testosterone profiles. So that's obviously a whole other thing in and of itself. But vitamin D also plays a role in the immune system. So you'll find that some people will get sick more often. If they're getting colds all the time. I know people like that. They just get colds repeatedly. And then they're having to take time off work or whatever because they're sick. And then the last component is mood stabilization. So part of the reason why people get seasonal depression is because they're not getting as much sun exposure. Their vitamin D status goes down and it affects their brain chemistry. So I tell people simple things like vitamin D, vitamin B12, knowing what your sex hormone profiles are. You can troubleshoot those things with supplements from Amazon and enhance how you feel. And then the last principle that I love is this idea of, and you mentioned my meals before, as this macro bowl concept. So the macro bowl concept is if you look at your plate and you sort of think of it as like a pie graph, right? You have one section of that pie graph that's a lean protein. You have one section of that pie graph that's maybe a starchy carbohydrate, like sweet potato, brown rice, something like that. You have another larger section of that plate that is your fibrous vegetables. So I say eat the rainbow, meaning where's your green, where's your red, where's your orange, and that way you might have power greens or microgreens. You might have red peppers and then grated carrot. If you're doing a stir fry, you might do like broccoli, red peppers, and carrot on that. Now the reason why I say eat the rainbow is because each color is representative of different micronutrients. So one of the things that people don't understand, guys, is like when it comes to optimizing how you feel and reducing cravings, if you are getting cravings for things, usually it's because your brain is trying to send you a signal something is missing. A good example is when a woman is going through her menstrual cycle, if she gets craving for chocolate at a certain point during that cycle, part of it can be magnesium loss through her menstrual cycle. So her brain is saying, me want chocolate, right? When in actuality, it needs magnesium. And so if you understood that, you could either supplement with magnesium, or we could use like a healthier source, like some cacao nibs in a smoothie. You would hit those micronutrient requirements and turn off that signal. Like that's literally how your body works. Your body's sending you signals. And so part of that fibrous vegetable concept is those micronutrients are there, the different colors, to check off different vitamins and minerals. And if you check off enough of those things, you turn off all these craving signals and you improve your energy levels, you decrease your brain fog. And so that macro bowl concept of having those different protein, starches, fibrous vegetables, and then you basically use the fats as like your condiment. So that would be like the way you flavor the meal, and you put that on and mix that up. That basic structure has helped so many people I've seen completely transform their health. And I can make my meals in 6 to 8 minutes. Like I don't want to be, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be spending 30 minutes, 45 minutes in the kitchen. Some people love cooking. It's just never been something that I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to finish work today and just spend an hour cooking.
Definitely.
You know?
And clean up
So
everything.
Yeah, no.
yeah, so part of it is like an efficiency thing, but then a practicality thing around checking off those different nutrient requirements. You know, one of the things I think that's a big part of, so just to kind of summarize that quickly, that relates to the nutritional component. You've obviously got the blood work component, which then can kind of tell you what type of supplementation and different things might be useful for you. You've got your daily step count, you've got your resistance training, and then the last part is probably sleep. You know, having a regular sleep wake cycle. And what I mean by that is 7 days a week, as much as you can, same time, Monday through Sunday. And what I even tell people is try to have your dinner meal slightly earlier, because a lot of people, they don't realize that, you know, if they're eating right up to the point that they go to bed, their body's breaking food down while they're lying down. So not only does it often give you the reflux and things like that, but it will raise your body temperature. You know, your metabolism is breaking all this food down. And when your core temperature is elevated, it stops you from getting into deep and REM sleep as effectively. So that's why an example might be like, well, I slept 8 hours. Why am I so tired? Well, if you slept 8 hours, but your REM and deep are zero, if they're very low, you're not actually getting a lot of restorative sleep. You're just getting a lot of light. And that's very common. I either see a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, they're so stressed, their sleep is kind of an afterthought, or they are getting sleep, but they're still so stressed that they're getting a ton of light sleep and no REM and deep. And so they're not getting that restorative stuff. So I think those are the main pillars. And, you know, and to kind of tie it all together, I tell people, you know, food is like software and your body and mind are the hardware. Meaning that food, that meal, that snack, whatever it is, that is either a good operating system update or it's like malware. And think about your computer. If you've had a virus on your computer before, things start to glitch, things crash. You don't get angry with your computer per se. You realize, okay, I've got something on here, I'm going to have to run Norton antivirus, clean it up. But you don't think it's the computer that's broken. You're not going to get rid of the computer. You need to clean it off. And the same thing is true where if you run a good operating system update, it kind of irons out all the bugs and it makes things work more effectively. Your body and mind are pretty much the same. And so food is in many ways either malware or it's an operating system update. And so anytime I think, so for example, let's say you've got a really important closing coming up with a really big client, that in the days preceding that, that's when your nutrition and your routines, you almost have to behave like an athlete preparing for like an NBA final or something. Like you want to be dialed in with your diet being really clean. You want to be exercising a little bit, but not overtraining. You want to be really focusing on the sleep and the hydration component, because that stuff that you do in the days preceding will affect your brain chemistry on the day. And then that kind of affects how you show up energetically. So it's a big part of it. I mean, I've had to learn these things because, like I said, you know, when I came from being diagnosed with all these things, life was really, really difficult. And if I didn't figure out and learn how to understand these concepts and apply them, I would have just kept putting malware into my system And to this day, I would just be pumped to the brim on antipsychotic meds. My skin was terrible. That's one of the other things is that, if you eat poorly, you end up getting a lot of psoriasis and eczema and pimples and all kinds of stuff. So the skin was terrible, like water retention, you look kind of puffy. So it's just one of those things where, like, all of these things that I share with you guys are literally through trial and error, like walking through the fire of adversity, basically.
So do you do any fasting, or you make sure you eat 3 meals a day, or?
Oh, good question. So this is one of the things, again, I always tell people the beautiful thing about health and fitness is that there's so much context and there's no right or wrong way to do stuff. There's different aspects. So fasting, it can be a really useful tool. What I'll do is, say for example, on a rest day, I will do some extended fasting at times where I'll go through to after lunchtime, even later in the day at times. Like if say for example, if we're traveling and I know that we're going to be on flights and things are going to kind of be all over the place, and a lot of the time you don't really want to rely on what you find in the airports.
Right.
And I just want to remove that variable completely often. So I'll just fast. I'll just go all the way through and not even worry about it. I'll just be drinking water and amino acids or something, not even worry about it. So I think from a longevity perspective, from a gut rehabilitation perspective, and sometimes from like a practicality standpoint, it can be really useful. I tell people, like, I had a guy, he's a guy that he does work with big 8 and 9 figure businesses that are planning on, the guy is wanting to exit. He's wanting to sell this thing. So they're trying to get the business ready to sell to investors. And he had a really big deal that in New York last Thursday. And we literally had like a battle plan that we walked through that had some fasting protocols in it. Because very often you'll find there's like and I mean, you might know this, Alex, like there is an element of like enhanced cognition once you get through that initial hump. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm so hungry, I'm losing it. And I'm like, first of all, you'll survive. And the second thing is, like, very often, like, you probably know, like, once you get through, you almost feel like more energy. And so I tell people, I think fasting has its place for people that are really busy, especially if you need to lose a lot of weight. It can be a useful tool. I don't think you need to, but it's one of those things where it can be a useful tool. I train at about 9 or 10 a.m. every morning, and I typically will train in a fasted state. So I don't eat breakfast before I train. I just push all my calories in after my training up until about 6 o'clock at night, and that's kind of like the window that I consume with it,
So after 6 o'clock, you don't eat?
Not really, no. And because part of the reason I found was that it would affect my sleep. So I noticed that if I ate in the evening closer to bed, I would sometimes almost wake up with like with a mild night sweat almost. It's almost like the core temperature was elevated enough that it did affect my sleep scores. And I was like, man, I'm just gonna like have my calories at 6 p.m. I have this little light dessert bowl that I make, and after that, I just pull the plug. And the sleep scores went up tremendously to the point now where I've been getting up at 3 a.m. for years now, and I can go all day and I don't feel like I'm burning out. A lot of people, they'll kind of hit this point and they'll be pretty tired. And my whole thing is like, coming back to the old principle, like how can you become the most efficient version of yourself? How can you create that ROI where your energy, because some people will say things like, oh, time is your most valuable asset. And I would probably say energy is. If you have a lot of time, but your energy is not good, you're not going to get as much done as someone with less time, but really good energy. So that energy, that energetic currency, that's kind of what drew, Alex, when I would see your stuff, I could see and feel that energy. So that's you can feel that through the internet,
And now that after what you're telling me, it's about to be even more, dude. I'm
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
exactly what you're saying, and what's happening to me is exactly what you're talking about. I am eating. I try not to eat like past 10, but I need to really move that up a lot sooner. A lot of times we're working late, or I coach baseball. I come home late, and I eat late. And
what time are you going to sleep? Because I think that is a big thing with us. We're up late, so then everything is pushed later.
Yeah, so I usually go to bed about 8:30, so it is quite early. And so I think part of it for me is one of the things that I noticed was that I don't think you have to go to bed early, as long as your sleep scores, like your deep and REM sleep, are improving. So I've seen people before go to bed at 10, 11, wake up a bit later, and overall their scores were pretty good. But I've also seen people go to bed early or late, and they didn't have those deeper metrics. So I would say, it's one of those things where another example of like personal preference. Some people will say things also, how many meals should I consume in a day? Is it better to have a pre-workout meal? Is it not? What is the best diet modality? Is it like Mediterranean? Is it paleo? Is it this or that? Is it vegan? Is it carnivore? And I tell people, like, there is like a multitude of ways to do this. And very often you almost have to go with what your tendency is, because if you try and fight that, like if you guys are night owls and you try and fight that, there's probably only a limited amount of time you'll actually get it to do it before you sort of default back. So I think part of it is trying to have a bedtime, but also maybe even like a cutoff time with your nutrition. And maybe that cutoff time, if you're going to bed at like 11, maybe that cutoff time is like 9 or something. And part of it's like this is the complexity, guys, of having, if you're coaching baseball and you're doing kids stuff afterwards, or you're closing a deal and it's late. Sometimes I find that I try to plan ahead and think to myself, if I'm going to be doing something that takes me late into the evening, maybe I front load and have my dinner meal early, like really early, like have it at mid-afternoon to get those calories in, to get that fuel in. And then after that, I just pull the plug. So I would rather do that at this point, have it early, pull the plug, go home, just like have a shower, hydrate, and then go to bed on an empty stomach, knowing that my sleep will be way better. And it's just a learning experience, So it's one of those things where the beautiful thing about health and fitness is that there are so many different ways to achieve the result. And you have a lot of people in the space who are very dogmatic. They'll say, well, this is the best way. You've got to do it this way. And I think that most people that are like that, they tend to either be new to the space, or they just are not as skillful or as intelligent as they think they are. They're sort of, it's that Dunning-Kruger effect. They think they're really good, and they're not really that good. Because if they were really good, they would be like, okay, there's so much context here. There's so much nuance. What is the state of Alex's gut health? What is the state of his hormone profiles? What does his daily schedule look like with his coaching sports and deals? I could give you this plan that looks really good to someone else that doesn't have all these other things going on, and it might work perfectly for them, and it's a complete disaster for you. And so it doesn't mean that the plan is good or bad. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means that like you need a different set of key levers to pull than that other person, and you can still get a good result. So one of the things I've seen with my students is there'll be a lot of different ways that we do stuff. Some people will fast. Some people will eat multiple meals. Some people will do a plant-based diet. Some people will do more of like a meat-based one if their digestion's really bad and they've had a lot of digestive issues and it's causing them a ton of distress where they can't even function. There's so many nuances to this, and so for me, even the modalities that I use, I don't push those onto people. Like I've been plant-based for 11 years. I don't push that onto people because I've seen it work really well for some people and I've seen it not work well for some people. And to me, I, not in good faith, could be like, you must do it. This is the best way. So I think if anything, it's a good sign when someone is like that, because they're basing their suggestions to you more off actual data and science and your context rather than, what they think is good for you,
What do you use to track your sleep?
So I don't track it anymore, but I did for a long time. So I use an Oura ring. So Oura ring is probably one of the best sleep trackers. A lot of people who like wearing watches, like you, for example, like will wear the Oura ring instead, so you don't have to have like a Whoop watch and so I think that from a perspective of if sleep was a primary focus for someone, an Oura ring, so O-U-R-A, Oura, I like them because it's kind of elegant looking. It would fit with your guys' brand, the way it looks. And I think that it gives you good data on the key things. So it tells you your heart rate variability, your resting heart rate. It's one of the things, it was really good lesson for one of my students who hadn't been drinking for a month. And he was tracking, he just got his Oura ring that month, so he'd never had a drink while he got his month's worth of data. And his heart rate was in the 40s. And he had one night with his wife where he had like 3 glasses of wine, and his heart rate went from 40s to 70s. It spiked up. It was a skyrocket. And then it came back down the next day. And when we were looking at his data, we could see like 40, 42, 41, 43, and then 70. And he's like, I cannot believe that little bit of alcohol had that type of physiological effect on me. And I said, I'm glad that you could see the data, man, because if it helps you make better decisions, I'm not even here to tell him he's got to stop drinking. He almost wanted to stop based on that alone. So it made him a lot more conscious of it. And I think, so the Oura ring isn't just useful for trying to figure out if your sleep's good or not. It's good for sort of interpreting other habits you have. You know, you might have a night where you have a big bowl of ice cream before bed and your REM sleep is like 0. And then you have another night where you go to bed and you have a really healthy meal and you don't eat anything like for an hour or two before you go to bed, and your REM sleeps up at like 60 minutes. And you wake up feeling really rested and you're like, oh, this feels amazing. You know, so I tell people, like, try to focus on the feeling that you want to achieve after the habit, after the thing is done. You know, so I think to myself, you know, I didn't want to come on and eat a pack of Oreos before I had this conversation with you guys. I'd be standing here with like brain fog and like blood glucose levels up and down like a roller coaster. So everything this morning was like clean and locked in for that reason, because I want to show up and be able to, you know, give your audience some really good value. So again, coming back to all these principles of like, you know, just core principles basically, you know?
So for somebody that has like never worked out ever, what advice would you give them to get their ass in the gym?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is, you know, if they're like sedentary and they're overweight and they're not doing anything, I would tell them the first thing they should probably do is just like a 20-minute walk every day. Because what I found is that when people start to move with something that's a really low bar of entry, like taking a walk with their dog or something, or walk with their spouse, that typically then shifts that gear from first gear up to second gear up to third. That when they're in that third gear, that's when they have more energy to go to the gym. So what I would tell people, a couple of things. I would say, make sure that you just start walking. Like, that's huge. If you can, walk out in the sun, get some sun on your skin. I would say another thing is have some form of accountability. You know, I think that if someone's tried to do things by themselves a lot, there's only so much willpower that you have. You know, I'll give you an example. So earlier today, for instance, I had a private Zoom session with a guy from upper level management in Apple in San Francisco, where he's in the Apple gym. I can see him on Zoom, and I can literally push him and train him through sets in real time. And the cool thing is that he'll go to Argentina for, you know, where his wife is from. They'll be down there. I'll be able to push him. He'll be on the balcony of a hotel in Argentina. I can push him through a banded workout down there. I can push him at the Apple gym. If he's at home for a picnic there, I'm pushing him there. So the point I'm making is that sometimes if you're really struggling to get it done, you need to almost outsource that discipline. If you can, you need to find something or some way to jumpstart your engine. And I think another part of it is, like, if you get in an accountability group, or you have people around you that are sort of doing it with you. You know, if you're just doing it by yourself, it's way harder. If you have a group of friends, if you're in a mastermind, if you have something where you have some type of accountability system, that can at least help. I would say the other thing, from a tactical standpoint, just get into the gym and just use machines first. You don't have to get all fancy and figure out how to do like a clean and jerk and, like, you know, max effort deadlifts and stuff. I mean, don't even think about that. I would be jumping on the leg machines one day. I'd be jumping on the chest and shoulder machines one day. I'd be jumping on the back machines one day. And I would just do that, because those movement patterns will guide you themselves. You know, if you're doing a row, you're not going to be able to like go all over the place with a row. The row is going to keep you in this range. So that way you don't have to have all this extra knowledge. You can just like hit the machines, go. So I would say like that, and that concept of like that not having an all or nothing. Like a 10-minute workout is actually significant. A 10-minute workout per day is significant for someone who's not training. Like you do not have to be training, like you said, 2 hours a day, just destroying yourself. I used to do that when I was a bit younger, and it's not productive when you're a parent. I mean, if you just obliterate your energy where you've just done super heavy leg training and you have no energy for like your spouse and kids. I mean, it's unless you're a professional bodybuilder making money from that, it's ridiculous. So the point being is you don't have to have these long, massive, difficult workouts. And then the last thing I would say from like a nutritional standpoint is have a look at some of the meal prep services that are out there. You know, there's like different meal prep services, whether it be like Go Methodology or Icon Meals or MegaFit Meals, or there's even a lot of like sort of like pre-made frozen bowls in the stores. I mean, there's like these I forget the names, like power bowls and different things, and basically it's almost like a healthier meal, but it's frozen. I mean, yeah, sure, one could say, oh, you know, you need to make your own and all these things, but I would say like if you get a bunch of those power bowl meals, like the protein bowl meals in the frozen section, and you just do that to start with. If you were to do that plus machines for 10 to 20 minutes and walk for like 10,000 plus steps, you would already be ahead of most people. And most people don't even think that. They think that they have to do some massive thing, 75 hard double workouts, like the most brutal workouts. I'm going to do this like super strict keto diet for 75 days. And it's so unsustainable for most people. They just can't wait to relapse. So my whole thing is like focusing on those seemingly small things that are actually big levers. So I would say from that perspective, man, like those things would be what I would suggest to someone if they were just like, I don't know where to begin, or they're a total beginner. I would say focus on those things.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
I was going to ask you, what is your opinion on like protein shakes and supplements? Because a lot of people
Yeah.
get stuff and they don't know what they're taking, or how do you know which ones to go with and things like that.
Yeah, so I think it's that context of, you know, first of all, I would say not all supplements are created equal. So I would say, you know, when it comes to supplementation, make sure that you use a quality brand. You know, but obviously quality to some people might sound subjective, but I would say, you know, not using brands from Walmart, for example, not using brands from Walgreens or CVS. Like typically the stuff in there are just kind of like these big mainstream things that have a lot of money, but the quality control of them is not good. Brands like Thorne are usually a very good brand because they have a lot of endorsement with a lot of physicians, and physicians have a lot of scrutiny on them legally, and so they need to have a lot of third-party testing and certification for purity. So I would say Thorne is a good brand. When it comes to supplementation, I always tell people, like, try to take, I guess, more of a minimalist approach if you can. But if you want to really biohack yourself, just make sure that you know what's happening in your blood work and even like a hair mineral analysis, so you're not overdoing it. You know, so a good example might be if you get a hair mineral analysis done, there might be minerals or vitamins that you're having almost toxic levels to, like you're consuming so much of it that it could cause issues. Now, obviously for most people, I would say that's not common. I would say it's the other end of the spectrum where they're not getting enough stuff. But I would say like, I think like some people will say, oh, you know, you should just get everything from Whole Foods. Protein shakes are bad. They're like processed, this, that. I would say, yeah, like I get that. I do think on a spectrum, it's going to be much better to eat a whole food, lean protein than it is to drink like a protein shake. But I would say from a practicality standpoint, where is that person coming from? Like, if they don't have that protein shake, are they then not going to eat for a while and then get so kind of lightheaded and woozy they just eat a Snickers bar? Or, you know, they're not going to do something productive. Does that protein shake help curb their sweet tooth? You know, like, does it help them stop eating ice cream or something else? maybe they can't handle all the food volume in their gut. You know, they had a big salad, they feel really full. Adding more whole food in there, they may feel super bloated and distended. I mean, my wife, for example, she eats more whole food fats like nuts, seeds, hummus, stuff like that. Because if she has like big portions of meal, she feels quite like bloated, and she doesn't like having that feeling. And especially at certain times in the month with her menstrual cycle, she'll notice her digestion will slow down. She'll even feel a bit more bloated. And so if someone was to say, hey, you can't drink that protein shake, you need to have this massive meal instead, on someone that in that context is already feeling bloated, it's almost worse. So I would say like the context is really important. I think they're a useful tool for curbing sweet tooth, for people with, you know, if they've got different digestive issues, for people that are really busy and they need something that's quick. I do like to use different supplements. My mentality is like, I'm going to try and get as much good stuff from Whole Foods as I can, but I want to optimize everything. Like if I can fine tune the engine, you know, if you can take that Formula One race car engine, that Lewis Hamilton race car engine, and you can obviously get the engine going well, but then you fine tune it with the details, and that gives you like the little edge here and here and here, and that compounds and just gives you that whole other level. If you can afford that financially, and you don't mind taking a few extra pills each day, I'm like, go for it, knock yourself out, you know. So that's kind of my perspective. But I would say there's a lot of supplements people probably don't need to take. Like I don't take fat burners, for example. I don't take like extra stimulants. Like a lot of the fitness industry supplements, for example, I don't take. You know, like there'll be ones like, here's this fat burning thing and it's got a bunch of yohimbe and like caffeine and all these other things in it. Like that's the last thing I want to take, because I don't want stuff that's going to kind of rev up my anxiety and like take me out of flow state more. I will take things that help with recovery and oxidative stress, antioxidants, things like that kind of help slow down the aging process. You know, so you can look more youthful, you recover better, you sleep better, all that type of stuff. So I hope that answers the question. It was kind of a roundabout way. But
yes, it definitely.
You know, I
Yeah.
tell my guys, I tell everyone around me, you know, if you want to, a lot of things, working out will, you know, take care of your anxiety. It'll take care of so many things that are going on with you. And, you know, that's why I wanted to ask, like, you know, what could be the thing that I could get them motivated enough to get them in there, you know? So, no, you definitely answered a lot of questions, and you know, I want to help these guys live their best life and become the most elite version of themselves. And, you know, it starts right there. You know, you got to take care of yourself, 100%. And, you know, I always did well. I just never went to the gym, and I used to wake up early and these guys were sleeping. I'm like, hey, let me try going to the gym and see if, you know, let's, they gave me a free week, and I was like, let me see if I'll even go. I went every day. So I don't go with anyone. I wish I did. You know, don't really have a workout partner. I am motivated to go. I don't get sick. So that's another benefit from it. I'm never ever, you know, worried about catching a cold or getting sick. So that definitely helps. So I just needed to know, you know, a few things. Hopefully these listeners listen and get their butts out to the gym. And you gave them so much information. Gave me so much information.
So many golden nuggets today.
Yes,
awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I definitely need to get better sleep. I do sleep pretty well, but you know, I don't really wake up too often. But if I could get even better sleep, hey, I'm all for it. And I'm definitely going to stop eating, you know, mindless eating before I go to sleep, because there's sometimes I, you know, hit the fridge and I don't even know what the hell I'm doing open in the fridge. I'm going to bed, you know, so I got to stop these cravings, and because I definitely, you know, I some of my suits are getting a little tight, so I need to definitely do something about that.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I just tell people, just start wherever you are, you know, just start. And I mean, like guys, I mean, anything that you heard me today talk about, even pick one thing. You know, you might go get the ordering, you know, like that one thing. And I always tell people, just start with one thing and just build on it, you know, because if you do that and you do that week by week, month by month, you start stacking those habits. So, yeah.
Cool.
That's what it's
about. I
about.
learned so much from you today, and I think that the way that you explain it puts it into a perspective that makes it easy for someone like myself to get moving on some of that stuff.
A lot of stuff you explained I had no idea about. You know, I don't know too much about nutrition, so that definitely helped. And I'm going to definitely I
Well,
really got to get Jamie going. She's one of the people I need to get motivated.
Yeah, he's at the gym and I'm getting kids ready and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm walking, I'm active,
Thank you,
but I
guys.
need to do more. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely
Well, thank you.
right.
I mean, I appreciate this conversation.
No, I
Yeah.
appreciate you being on here.
And I hope that it helps your listeners. And guys,
Sure.
just go implement something, right?
Definitely. How could listeners get a hold of him? Right?
Yeah, how can listeners get a hold of you? How can they find you?
Yeah, so I mean, I can send you through my links if you want, but if they search Fraser Bailey, FraserBailey on Facebook, I'm at Fraser Bailey on Instagram. If they just search me on Facebook or Instagram and drop me a message there, I can then give them more information on different options, coaching levels, all that type of fancy stuff. But guys, I mean, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for
so
your
much, man. I
time.
really
Thank
appreciate
you so much. We
Guys, if I was
appreciate
you, please reach out to this man. He's full of so much knowledge, and I mean, look at this man. Holy cow.
Superhuman.
Thanks again,
Thank
bro.
you,
I appreciate
guys.
you, man. You have a great night, and we're
Sure.
here for you. Anything you need.
Thank you.
All right.
Later, bro.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Perfect. That was awesome.
He's definitely a beast, bro.
Oh my gosh, I learned a lot from him.
Holy fuck. I'm about to get dialed in.
Now I feel
Need
like
your help, bro.
now I
Need
feel
your
like
help.
I'm pass out because I'm gonna eat.
¿Qué dice? ¿Cómo está? Bien, bien. ¿Cómo está? ¿Qué le podemos ayudar? Sí, Alejandro. Sí. Ando